Level 1, the favor. It starts with an envelope you didn't ask for. You're standing in the back office of a community center that smells like cheap coffee and damp carpet. Someone laughs too loudly in the hallway. Across the desk, a local contractor slides the envelope toward you like it's nothing. You both know exactly what it is. You've done a lot for the district, he says. You nod. Your hand rests on the envelope but doesn't open it. Inside is $3,000 in cash, small bills, rubber banded. Not enough to ruin a life, just enough to start one. You're a first-term city council member. Your salary is $42,000 a year before taxes. Rent is rising. Campaign debt is still hanging over you like a bad smell. The contractor wants a zoning variance. Nothing illegal, technically. Just a vote. You tell yourself it's not corruption, it's support, relationships, the way things work. You take the envelope. The first rule reveals itself immediately. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows. Nothing in politics is free. That vote passes 2 weeks later. The contractor's project gets approved. 3 months later, your campaign account mysteriously receives a $25,000 donation from a political action committee you've never heard of. That's when you understand the second rule. Favors compound. And once you take the first one, the system notices. Level 2, the network. Your phone starts ringing more often. Lobbyists, developers, consultants, people who want to help. You're invited to dinners in private rooms where the lights are dim and the wine bottles cost more than your monthly rent. Nobody talks about bribes. That word never appears. They talk about support. They talk about partnership. They talk about long-term relationships. You learn the currency of this level. Information. Access. Timing. One evening, a lobbyist named Martin leans across the table at a steakhouse downtown. You're smart, he says. You're going places. You've heard that sentence before. But this time it comes with numbers. Martin manages legislative strategy for a regional energy company. They want influence on a regulatory committee. You're not even on that committee. Yet. But you know someone who is. Martin slides a contract across the table. A consulting position for a nonprofit that exists mostly on paper. $6,000 a month. Minimal responsibilities. You just need to attend community advisory meetings, which means nothing. You sign it. At this level, the system teaches you the third rule. Money rarely moves directly. It travels through foundations, consulting contracts, campaign donations, speaking fees. Legal enough to survive scrutiny. Dirty enough to buy loyalty. You stop seeing envelopes. Now it's wires, checks, and advisory roles. Your income triples. Your conscience shrinks. You tell yourself you're still doing good work, and sometimes you are. That's what makes it easy. Level 3, the operator. You win re-election easily. Name recognition helps. So does the $480,000 your campaign raised. Most of that money came from people you've never met, but your consultants know them well. You've moved from city council to state legislature. A bigger office, better staff, higher stakes. At this level, corruption becomes procedural. It hides inside legislation. A clause added at 1:30 a.m. A regulatory exemption buried on page 412 of a budget bill. Nobody reads everything, but someone always benefits. One night, your chief of staff brings you a draft amendment. It'll help the shipping companies, she says. How much? About $18 million in tax relief. And we get? She shrugs. Roughly $200,000 across the next 2 election cycles. You stare at the document. This time, the money isn't even for you. It's for survival. Campaigns are expensive. Television ads, data analytics, polling, staff salaries. Without donors, you lose. Without power, you become irrelevant. So you sign the amendment. That's when you realize the fourth rule. Corruption rarely feels like greed. Most of the time, it feels like maintenance. You're not stealing. You're sustaining the machine. You start moving pieces quietly, calling committee chairs, trading votes, building alliances. You're no longer a participant. You're an operator. Level 4, the deal maker. Now people come to you. Not for favors, for solutions. Your reputation has grown. You're reliable, discreet, effective. You understand how deals actually happen. Not in hearings. Not on the record. Deals happen in hotel suites during policy conferences, or on private flights between cities, or during quiet walks through empty Capitol hallways after midnight. A pharmaceutical executive once meets you in a quiet bar. He doesn't mention money. Instead, he mentions jobs. 3,000 new positions if the regulatory process speeds up. You know what he means. There's a review board standing in the way. Technically independent. But their funding comes through committees you influence. A few phone calls later, the board receives budget guidance. Their staffing changes. Their timeline shortens. Approval arrives 6 months earlier than expected. Your campaign receives $1.2 million from healthcare interests over the next year. Nobody connects the dots publicly. But inside the system, everyone knows. At level 4, the fifth rule becomes clear. Power flows toward reliability. You do what you promise. You never expose a partner. You never get greedy. And most importantly, you never get caught. Your name begins circulating in national political circles. You're invited to bigger meetings now. Rooms where senators listen. Rooms where governors negotiate. You're climbing. And climbing changes you. You no longer hesitate before signing things. That part of you disappeared 2 levels ago. Level 5, the gatekeeper. The office is bigger now. Capitol view. 2 assistants outside your door. Security detail during major events. You chair a powerful committee. Nothing major moves through the legislature without touching your desk. Companies know it. Lobbyists know it. Even your enemies know it. Your calendar becomes a marketplace. A mining company wants environmental regulations softened. A tech firm wants tax credits for building data centers. A real estate consortium wants infrastructure funding for a massive development. Everyone has something to offer. Campaign donations. Future board positions. Consulting opportunities after politics ends. But at this level, the money is almost secondary. The real currency is leverage. Information about rivals. Embarrassing documents. Financial records. Private behavior. Politics at this height runs on mutually assured destruction. One evening, a senior lobbyist sits across from you with a folder. Inside are photos. Another senator. Hotel room. Someone who isn't his wife. The lobbyist closes the folder. We're hoping you can encourage his cooperation. You stare at the folder for a long moment. Then you nod. That senator's vote changes 2 weeks later. You never show him the photos. You don't need to. Rumors travel faster than proof. That's when you fully understand the 6th rule. Fear is cheaper than money. And far more reliable. You sleep less now. Not because of guilt. Because you're calculating constantly. Every alliance. Every threat. Every possible betrayal. You're powerful. But power has weight. Level 6. The architect. You're no longer just passing legislation. You're designing systems. Election maps. Regulatory structures. Budget frameworks that determine where billions of dollars flow. At this level, corruption becomes structural. Invisible. Permanent. You help redraw district boundaries after a census. The map looks innocent, but its geometry quietly guarantees your party's dominance for a decade. Analysts call it strategic. Opponents call it rigging. You call it math. Corporate leaders start meeting you privately now. Not lobbyists. CEOs. Billionaires. People who don't need to ask. They propose infrastructure deals worth $4 billion. Transportation contracts. Energy projects. Defense manufacturing plants. These decisions shape entire regions, and each one comes with quiet agreements. Post-political careers. Investment opportunities. Board seats worth $500,000 a year. You're not thinking about cash anymore. You're thinking about legacy. At level 6, the 7th rule appears. Real corruption writes the rules that future corruption follows. You're not skimming money. You're designing pipelines. Pipelines that move wealth, influence, and control long after you leave office. You've become an architect of the system itself. And systems are hard to dismantle. Level 7, the untouchable. Investigations happen. They always do. Journalists publish exposés. Opposition parties demand inquiries. Ethics committees hold hearings. But nothing sticks. Because by now, the system protects you. Judges were appointed by allies. Regulators owe their positions to your network. Donors fund legal defense funds before accusations even surface. You sit calmly during televised hearings while senators ask questions they already know the answers to. You respond carefully. Measured. Technical. Nothing illegal. Everything defensible. Public outrage fades after a few news cycles. It always does. Your power has moved beyond elections. Even if you lose office tomorrow, your influence survives. Think tanks. Foundations. Consulting firms. Political action committees. Your network spans them all. Young politicians seek your approval. Corporate boards seek your advice. Foreign diplomats request meetings. At this level, the 8th rule becomes obvious. The real goal was never office. It was permanence. And you've achieved it. But permanence comes with a strange side effect. Distance. Old friends stopped calling years ago. Your family sees you mostly through security perimeters and scheduled appearances. Every conversation feels transactional. Everyone wants something. Everyone fears you a little. You're powerful, but you're also alone. Level 8, the ghost. You rarely appear in public now. Officially, you're retired. Technically, you hold no office. But decisions still move through you. Quiet phone calls. Private meetings in windowless conference rooms. Policy ideas that originate from your foundation. Candidates you quietly fund during primaries. You watch governments move like chess pieces. A governor wins an election after receiving $18 million from a political action committee linked to your network. A regulatory rule appears that benefits an industry you invested in 5 years ago. A federal contract worth $9 billion lands with a company whose board you joined last winter. No fingerprints, no headlines, just outcomes. Your name circulates like a rumor. Some people call you a kingmaker. Others call you something darker. You don't correct either one. At this level, you understand the final rule. The system never belonged to voters. It belongs to the people who understand it. You sit in a quiet office overlooking a city you helped shape. Highways, corporate towers, district boundaries, entire industries, all influenced by decisions you made in quiet rooms decades earlier. You're powerful beyond measurement and completely removed from the world that first elected you. Sometimes you think about the beginning. That envelope, $3,000. It feels small now, almost innocent, but that's how it always starts. Somewhere tonight, a nervous first-term council member stands in a back office after a fundraiser. A local contractor slides an envelope across the desk. $3,000. Rubber-banded. The room smells like cheap coffee. The volunteers are stacking folding chairs. The council member hesitates. Just for a second. Then their hand closes around the envelope. They think it's a small favor. They think they understand the game. They don't, but they will.